Good evening. Welcome to the Aga Khan Museum Lapis Digital Benefit. My name is Ali Hassan. I am so happy to be your host this evening. Very thrilled to hear how many of you are tuning in this evening from all over the world. It is going to be a wonderful evening. Right before we get started, first thing I have to say is a huge thank you to our sponsor, Steel Canada Resources Limited. They have donated very generously, as have a number of other supporters, and we hope you will do the same. And you can do that right now, actually. In the bottom corner here, there's a QR code that you will see. You put your phone on top of the code, and you can donate via the QR code, or you can click on that donate button if you're watching us on some device. Many ways to donate. Please do, and please do so generously. This organization, this museum, will directly benefit from those donations, and it is truly a wonderful cause. Our theme this evening is lighting the way. Now, we live in illuminating times, to say the least. So we are going to explore this theme in a few different ways. Number one, we are going to look at this theme through cultural memories. Number two, through generational change. And number three, through the arts. And you will see some wonderful thinkers and presenters and speakers and terrific performers all evening who will guide you through our theme. I hope you're being safe. I hope you're enjoying as much as you can in this pandemic. It's not easy, I know. I do hope that we will get through this. I've been struggling, particularly with the mask. I'm a supporter. Big supporter of the mask. Want the virus gone, want the virus to be a distant memory, but I wear glasses. For those of you out there, you wear glasses, I see you, I feel you. Some of you don't know. The mask fogs up our glasses right away. We're in a grocery store, all of a sudden you can't see, it's panic, anxiety, you think you're touching somebody. Sir, is that someone? Are you close to me? You rip everything off, turns out it's just the zucchinis, but still, a lot of anxiety. But there are some good things about the mask as well. For example, my 5-year-old, by the end of this year, will probably have a very thick mustache. That's a good thing, right? I'm not a gardener, but I feel that, underneath that mask, lush growing conditions. I think by December, he will have, people are going to be asking him, are you the principal of this school? And he's going to be like, no, I'm in junior kindergarten, but I look like Magnum PI. So that's a good thing that's going to happen in our house, and also hopefully we will combat this virus. The other thing I want to mention is, this is just a PSA from me, a lot of elbow bumping happening. A lot of elbow bumping going on right now. My friends, I've been coughing and sneezing into this thing for the last 6 months. This is the most disgusting part of my body. That is reckless. This elbow bump, you can't. This is how men, flush urinals. This is how we get out of bathrooms when there's no tissue paper. Stay away from the elbow. We got to bring back the salute or the old-fashioned bow. So to everybody listening this evening, I salute you. I bow to you. I welcome you to what is definitely going to be a wonderful night. Before we get started, I wanted to turn things over to the Prince, Amin Aga Khan, to share a few words.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome you most warmly to the Lapis Digital Benefit. There is no ignoring that this is an experience unlike any other, I think, that has ever been held by the Aga Khan Museum, and its very existence is in a way a credit to the Lapis Committee. I want to thank the Lapis Committee very much, and I also, perhaps more importantly, want to thank all of you who have joined us this evening, to our great pleasure and delight. Traditionally, I suppose I'd be looking out across a room full of beautiful dresses and formal garb and all the gala-associated formality. However, tonight we gather, all of us, in what I hope is the comfort of our homes, and perhaps even sharing this unique experience with family and friends. All of you have chosen to join us from your own home, and as a global community, and despite not being physically together, we have all chosen, nevertheless, to be together, wherever we are, whatever time it is, for each of us. I think this is an exceptional example of unity. Many have rightly said that we are living in challenging times, but I think it can also be said that in rising to meet challenges, we become agents of transition, lighting the way for ourselves and our world as we find the way to build a new, shared reality. The recent events that have impacted and continue to influence the entire globe have led us all to examine our priorities and perhaps even our world in closer detail. And this introspection is not limited to us as individuals, but to the groups, the organizations, the institutions, and the community to which we all belong. The Archive Museum has also been introspective, seeking ways in which our mission may be fulfilled in these tumultuous, often unimaginable times, ways in which we may still light the way going forward and continue to fulfill our mission. And I think we can honestly say our Museum Without Walls is proving to be one key way in which we are succeeding. Culture, and the different arts that form culture, is something that we all share. It is a way of rediscovering our dignity and rediscovering that which unites us, and there is a necessity for us to share that art and culture on a global scale, because we need to rediscover our global dignity and our global unity. Originality, freedom, and unity are not contradictory terms, and culture exemplifies that, as culture is, of its essence, evolutionary. In a world where the global population should and can be unified, and in a world that has the technological ability to reach the furthest corners of our globe, our Museum Without Walls allows us to promote pluralism and diversity to all, no matter where they physically may be. As long as a person can go online, they can share in our exploration and celebration of that which unifies us all, of the history that binds us, and of the dreams, the emotions, and the human experience that are the essence of art and that we all share. Understanding one another, especially in times of radical change, is one of the basic requirements for facing the new realities and resultant changes, as it unifies us to build a new reality with a new culture shared by us all. The art produced as we change will act as a record of our common endeavor, a reflection of our new and changed reality. Together, we will create and construct a new global culture that recognizes the strengths in our differences. I want to express my deepest gratitude to all of our sponsors who have made this broadcast possible. Your generosity is key in our being able to light the way forward. And once again, to you who have joined us virtually, thank you for your continued commitment and support. My wish is that all of you should be safe, that you should remain safe, and well, of course, and that benefiting from the illumination which we share in this museum, we will, together, light the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you to the Prince for those wonderful words. And don't forget, you can also donate right now. It's very simple. We've made it as easy as we can. You open up your phone, you go to your camera, and you hold your camera over that QR code in the bottom of your screen. Or if you're watching online, you can just click on that donate button. Now, we all want a better future for ourselves and for our family. But part of that means owning our past and our culture. We're going to start this evening with two performers who make their cultural history very much part of their performance. I'd like to introduce you now to Mo Clark and Chris Dirksen.
Tansei, I'm Mo.
And I'm Chris.
And we're going to perform the song Refuge in Truth. And it was really inspired by the exhibit Sanctuary that I had the chance to visit for the first time yesterday. And really inspired by Nicholas Gallanin's work, as well as Marcos Ramirez Ere and Ai Weiwei. So it's looking at notions of displacement and of alienation and of being exiled from lands. As Indigenous people, this is an ongoing struggle that we face, and it's trying to piece together ways that memory can help us to reclaim that space of belonging and connection. So the lyrics in Cree, Nehiawewin, which is one of, I guess, our ancestral languages, E aspi moyak tapwewenota mamawe pimati siwenochi. We're taking refuge in truth all together in life.
And we wrote this song inspired by this exhibit just for you today.
Inside me, there is truth, Tapwewin, taking refuge. Inside me, there are circles, taking refuge. Inside me, there is shame, love, fear, taking refuge. Inside me, heartbeats built of blue spruce, tree rings rooted in legacies held deep beneath the broken, taking refuge. Inside me, your eyes forming hoops of light, resilient, courageous, walking the edge of incredible dreams, bearing witness to exiled land, poisoned streams, taking refuge. Inside me, melodic utterances of kukum song, seeping through cracks of kitchen table, ceremony held under draped sheets, woolen blankets insulate secrets, becoming prayers. Inside us, estranged moments, not all our own. An inheritance fills the silence after the bomb goes off. In our hearts, on our radios, in our streets. Deafening voices we know but do not hear unless we care to take refuge. Inside me, your eyes look darker. From this screen, this space I see. To taste you, here near me, longing pulls sense from holy pockets. Your hand wrapped in mine, memories take refuge in touch, in sweet, inside. Honey from fireweed, the beekeeper gathers at dawn. Morning dew still wet on the stem, hem of coat closing in on the hum. Can we hold close the possibility of community woven, singing the silken threads of belonging into a luminous weave, like bees, take refuge in the gift. Refuge in dirt, make our feet wet like seeds in the soil of real time, deep like the hollow of Earth's basin, lined with bones, ancient stones who carry water home, back to the source, bursting over bellies and full moon breasts, renewed in liquid memory, taking refuge in animate time, now time, inside me, you are there, somehow the weave of this thread, we bear the load, we care enough to carry, we carry together, so let us take refuge in knowing this is Sagitoin, Wagutoin, Pimatsuin. Easpi moya, Tapwe winota, Mamoe Pimatsuin, Ochi,
Such a beautiful performance and a perfect lead into today's panel. Thank you so much, Chris and Mo. Good evening, everybody. My name is Zaya Tong, and welcome to our first panel on reclaiming cultural memory. Now, individually, of course, we all have memories, but collectively, we share memories as well. But sometimes power can shape those memories. Today, we have three fantastic guests for our first panel who are going to talk to us about how they have been able to reclaim their cultural history. Starting with Ariel Nasser, he is the award-winning director of the 2019 documentary The Forbidden Reel, which follows a group of Afghan filmmakers who risked their lives to save the country's cinematic heritage. His acclaimed films have been featured on over a dozen global networks. Dayo Ogonyemi is a producer and entrepreneur with 2 decades of experience championing underrepresented voices in African film and media. He's been a presenter at the world's most prestigious film festivals and served as an advisor on government policy and regulation. And M.G. Vasanji is an internationally recognized author, recipient of many of the world's top literary prizes, and a member of the Order of Canada. And his work often explores issues of migration, diaspora, history, and identity. Now, Ariel, I wanted to just start off with you. Your film, The Forbidden Reel, is incredibly powerful, just so much bravery to protect this cinematic heritage. And I know that you talked about people's perspective of Afghanistan being kind of stereotyped, kind of monolithic. So what did this archive reveal?
Great question. Looking through the films at Afghan Film, which is this old state institution that has been producing films since the 1960s, I was able to explore this whole cinematic heritage of Afghanistan that really is not very well known outside of the country or nowadays inside of the country, especially by the younger generation. And what's incredible is that despite all of the cultural destruction that has taken place in Afghanistan, that there is still this completely intact archive that has a record of all the cinematic production that's happened in Afghanistan in the 20th century. And these films are beautiful and insightful, and they show, 1,000 different Afghanistans through the lenses of all of these different cinematic artists. And so I was very, very happy to be able to bring that heritage to a larger audience.
What do you think is sort of the most shocking thing that people think when they've seen this archive? What surprises them about Afghanistan when they see that?
I think one of the things to remember about Afghan history, and one of the things that's really underlined by the films in the archive, is that at no time in Afghan history or the ideological perspectives ever really as black and white as they are presented outside of the country. There are always family and kinship and friendship bonds that go beyond ideology, and so you see in the film that in fact there was a Taliban official who tipped off the archivist at the film archive to hide the films away when the Taliban were coming to burn them. And so it was in fact a member of the Taliban who was instrumental in saving the films. You see filmmakers on both sides of the Afghan-Soviet war, both on the Mujahideen front lines and within the communist regime, communicating across enemy lines and sending films back and forth. And so all along the 20th century and through these terrible conflicts that took place, you see that Afghan individuals and artists are connecting with each other and are doing their best to preserve their heritage.
Well, for me, it really shattered so many stereotypes, and I was just thinking how fantastic it would be if we had a class called The World, where 195 different countries could present documentaries like the one that you did, how differently we would see each country and the people and the perspectives if we had that kind of worldview. So, Dio, I have a question for you, too. Your current work actually revolves around the first female king of Nigeria, which is very surprising to me. How does a woman become a king?
So that's interesting. Thank you for the question. To clarify, I'm working with an incredible academic, Dr. Wando Achebe, who's a professor at Michigan State University. And Dr. Achebe uncovered these colonial records, very limited colonial records about a female king who was crowned in the late 1920s, early 1930s in the eastern parts of Nigeria. And Dr. Achebe went into Nigeria, sort of visited the archives, and also went to the communities that this Ahebi Ugbabe came from, and was able to uncover, from oral tradition and piecing together that oral tradition with colonial records, this incredible story of this woman who rose practically from nothing to become a king.
Now, in your work, you've talked about how basically the West's image of Africa hasn't evolved at the pace of African culture. So what have you learned about African filmmaking? What is there that's out there that you think that we need to know about Africa's history and its present that we haven't caught up with?
I think one of the really interesting things about where we are at this point in time, both from a technology standpoint with filmmaking and with the way information is dispersed, is that in Africa it actually gives an opportunity to connect with traditions around, oral traditions, for instance, which were the ways by which personal and communal histories and narratives were transmitted across generations. Many African countries and cultures did not have written languages. Obviously, the exceptions like Ethiopia and others. But what this has meant is that the societies and cultures who have prized oral storytelling, oral narratives, are able to refashion those narratives in a modern context through television, through film. And for the first time in generations, those stories and narratives are able to be dispersed across large areas and for large audiences, both within the country, across the continent, and internationally. And I think from that standpoint, people are really getting a wide variety of stories out, not just the stories that gatekeepers in the West or elsewhere decide are important.
Yeah, absolutely. How about you, MG? You've written extensively about your growing up in East Africa. What kind of research did you do to do your writings?
Well, that research is in many forms. One is, of course, one's memory. And it's not just simple memory, it's a personal memory of my own life, what I heard and saw when I was growing up. The songs, the rituals, the everyday practices, the family memories that one so slowly absorbs. And then I also looked at when I started writing my novels, I started asking older people about their lives, about the details. I knew basically what I was writing about, but the details of lives lived, only the older people remembered. And so I would speak to these older people, get small details like what they wore in the 1910s or 1905 and so on, when they came from India to Africa. And the third kind of memory the third would be looking at books. There are the history books, which are sort of official histories, which contain some information, details, data, and so on. But then there were these journals and travelogues written by Europeans that, they may have been racist and one-sided, but they also gave a lot of little details. And as a novelist, what mattered to me were the details, what the landscape was like, what the weather was like, what were the little shops owned by the Indians, what did they look like, and so on. And finally, I also looked at archives both in Kenya and in UK. I went to, there was something called the Rhodes House, which housed a lot of archival material from East Africa. And that's where I got a lot of very detailed information as observed by some lonely English administrator in a little village. And those little things, sort of shaped my imagination to write at least my first few novels.
So, of course, it's so important to be able to have our own memories and be able to have the memories from a lot of our ancestors. But today, we're also seeing people rewriting history and memory. When we look at Donald Trump, who's trying to institute a patriotic education, we're seeing that in China as well. How do you guys think that storytelling can serve as a form of resistance to an official cultural memory?
Well, everybody rewrites the past. Even as individuals, we make up things that are biased towards our favor. And memory itself is not completely reliable. But we write to put our perspectives, our observations on the world map. We didn't exist before. And to exist, to bring ourselves on the stage, we write our stories. We tell ourselves, our people, and the world what we are. But as I said, people do write and rewrite, and every writer might look at the same information in different ways.
So Dio, earlier you talked about oral traditions. Today we have so many technologies. What do you think? Do you think that oral traditions need to be preserved just orally, or do you think that they should be digitally preserved? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I guess my perspective is that the proliferation or democratization of access to digital devices is meaning in Africa as a region that many people are reconnecting with traditional forms of storytelling, or of sharing narratives. Oral traditions are very personal. These personal narratives around culture, around religion, around family history are transmitted from parent to child within the family setting. And what you're seeing now is that a wide variety of people are able to engage in the narrative building process. As artists, it's an incredibly exciting time because a far wider number of voices are coming to the front, and just a proliferation of perspectives are being shared in very exciting ways.
Very true. And Ariel, last question over to you. How do you feel that reclaiming cultural history can reshape the future?
Well, I think right now you're seeing a real renaissance of Afghan cinema, but it's coming from a combination of artists inside the country and artists all over the world in the Afghan diaspora. And one of the things that I hope would happen with this film is it would kind of offer a new way for Afghan artists to see the past and to see, this material, which is so often kept locked away as something that they can use, that they can draw on, and that they can use to tell the story of Afghanistan their own way. So that's an extremely exciting thing for me, and I think for a lot of young Afghan artists. And these films are increasingly being digitized and becoming available. And so hopefully we can use that to have more continuity with the past and more fresh and interesting and exciting visions of the future.
Well, thank all of you today for joining us and for your terrific insights and your powerful work in preserving cultural history. Up next in a little bit, we're going to have another panel, 3 different generations looking at how they can impact today. Stay tuned.
This museum has seen a lot of cultural change over the years. Over the last 8 years, that change has been overseen by CEO and director Henry Kim. Now, Henry, we met last year, and you are now the outgoing CEO. Was it something I said, is the first concern that I have?
Absolutely.
It was? Well, good. I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad to hear that I had some impact on your life and this museum. Can you reflect reflect on your last 8 years, what they've been like here?
Well, it's been tremendous the last 8 years. And back to the question of cultural change, I think this museum, if anything else, has actually created change in culture. And you look at the amazing performances, the groundbreaking exhibitions, the educational programs, all of this I think has actually helped change culture within Toronto, within Canada, and perhaps even throughout the world, because we are bringing to the forefront arts and culture that many people may never have seen before. And I think that's a real cultural change. But for me, I think one of the biggest sort of cultural changes that has happened actually comes from a community of donors and supporters to the museum that this museum is actually created by existing. Right now there's over 5,000 people who are tuning into this broadcast, and there are thousands and thousands of supporters worldwide. And what I find amazing is that this community has truly evolved and developed. They're not only generous in terms of supporting the museum, but they themselves have undergone their own transformations. Whether it's a retired couple learning about the arts for the first time because they now have that moment to learn and having it facilitated by our programs. Whether it's volunteers who, on their own initiative, set up a chapter of our patrons thousands of miles away. Or a family that decides to support the creative arts through fellowships and through programs that encourage young artists to show their work. This is, I think, one of the most amazing cultural developments that has happened. And I think that this museum exists because of its supporters. And its supporters are getting a lot out of it because they themselves are being enriched by supporting this museum. That, to me, has been the most amazing bit of cultural change I've seen, and it's something that's not going to just last one generation. It has the potential of being multi-generational.
Thank you, Henry. I appreciate that. Henry Kim, outgoing CEO and director. The good thing about the pandemic, if anything, is that you don't have to bear a tight farewell hug from me, Henry. But know that I would have given you one had we been able to do that. Thank you so much, Henry. All the best. Godspeed. Good luck in your future endeavors. Henry mentioned generational change. That is the next piece that we are going to dive into. And I think you're really going to enjoy this. This is a piece, father and daughter, Trishi and Suba Sankaran, performing together.
It's a great pleasure for us to be performing together. This is my father, Trishi Shankaran. My name is Suba Shankaran. And there is something beautiful and remarkable about performing with two generations. Not only that, being father and daughter, but also as guru and disciple. I constantly learn from my father, and he has brought Indian music into my life all my life. I was the only one born in my family, in my generation, in Canada, and so to have one foot in the West and one foot in the East with my musical training is something I'm extremely grateful for.
It's equally my pleasure to perform here with my daughter, Subha Shankaran. We are bringing here Carnatic music, which are centuries old. And this particular piece that we are going to perform today is from the dance genre called Bharatanatyam. And this piece in particular, called Jatiswaram, in the raga Hemavati, and in the tal cycle of 7 beats, called Tisrajati Triputatala, comes from the Tanjore quartet of dance musicians who were at the court of Tanjore. This is from the 1800. And following the piece, I'll be playing a very, very short solo. Thank you.
Ni sa ji ga ma ba da ni sa ri sa ni da ni da ni da pa ma pa ma ga ri ga ma pa da ni sa ni da pa ma ga ji sa ni sa ri ga ma pa ma pa da ni sa sa ni sa ji ga ma pa da ni da ni da pa ma ga ji sa ri ga ma pa da ni sa da ni pa da ma pa ga ma pa da ni da pa ma ga ji sa ni da ni sa ri ga ma pa da ni da ni sa ri ga ji sa ni da pa ma ga ji sa ri ga ma pa da ni sa ni da pa ma ga ji sa ni sa ji ga ma pa da ni da pa da ni da pa ma pa da ni da pa ni da sa ni re sa ni da ni da pa ni da pa ma ga ji sa ni da pa da ni sa ri ga ma pa da ni da pa da ni da pa ma pa da ni sa ni da ni sa ri ga ji sa ni da ni da pa ma ga ji sa ni sa ri ga ma pa da ni sa ni da pa ma ga ji sa ni sa ji ga ma pa da ni sa ni sa ji sa ni da pa da ni da pa ma ga ri sa da ni sa ri ga ma ga ma pa da ni sa ni sa ji sa ni da pa da ni da pa ma ga ri sa da ni sa ri ga ma ga ma pa da ni sa ni re sa ni da pa ma ga ri sa ri ga ma pa da ni sa ri ga ni sa ri da ni sa pa da ni da pa ma ga pa ma da pa ni da sa ni da ri sa ni da ma pa ma ga ri sa ni sa ji ga ma pa da ni sa sa ni sa ri ga ma pa da ni sa. Takanakajum, dit tari takanakajum, tari takanakajum, takanakajum, nakajum, tadi tangra the peru, tangra the peru, tangra the peru, tangra the peru, tangra the peru, tangra the peru, tangra the peru, tangra the peru, tangra the peru, ta.
From beautiful intergenerational sounds to our next panel on how the different generations can be empowered to face the challenges that are before us today, we have 3 panelists that are joining us to look at how we can rebuild with generational change. So we've got representative from Generation X, Generation Y, and the Boomers, starting with Radha Chadha, and she is a Canadian visual artist and scientist whose practice explores invisible realities like the microscopic realm and electromagnetic energy. She's exhibited and lectured on her artistic process and microbiology at universities and museums across Canada. Jamili Hassan is the boomer amongst us. She is a visual artist, lecturer, writer, and curator, and for more than 30 years has been recognized as a leader and community builder in the Canadian art world. Her multidisciplinary practice explores questions of colonialism and cultural identity, amongst other themes. And Chuck Odenabo, representing Generation Y, his passion lies in the intersection between cultures, health, and the environment. He is recognized as an expert in the Healthy Parks, Healthy People movement and was named Top 30 Albertans Under 30 and Top 10 Young Franco-Albertan Leaders by Radio Canada. So all of you, welcome to this panel. Chuck, I'm going to start with you because your generation, you know, we know that the young people have been so empowered these days, from Fridays to the Future to the Sunrise Movement. And I know that you belong to something called the Future Ancestors Service. So I was wondering, first of all, what does it mean to be a future ancestor?
Good afternoon, morning, whatever time of day you are watching this. So yeah, Future Ancestors Services is a company that a couple of friends and I set up together, and it's based out of Calgary, and we are a Black and Indigenous-owned and operated organization that seeks to make Canada a better country for the next generation of Canadians. And so we really sort of see ourselves as the ancestors to the future generation. We want the future generation to look back at us as their ancestors and to be like, oh, our ancestors did a good job. We want to be the kind of ancestors that make them proud. But then we use the term future ancestors because it has a double meaning. It also means that we are the future of our ancestors as well. And so we sort of recognize the heritages that we have, and we take pride, but also we recognize the failures of our ancestors, and we take on that sort of ancestral accountability, that ancestral responsibility to fix maybe some of the errors that they made, but then also continue doing what we can to make this country a better country so that every Canadian, regardless of ethnicity, background, skin color, all that fun stuff, feels like Canada is their home and feels comfortable and happy and can prosper in this country.
Very interesting. So I'm going to jump over to Jamili because you mentioned this idea of, how we've inherited this planet. And no offense at all, of course, Jamili, but the boomers sometimes get a little bit of blame. They were very, hardcore, lots of protests between the 60s and 70s. But some people kind of do blame the boomers for the world that we've inherited today. What do you say to that?
Well, I think there's some accuracy there for a certain 1% of the population, but I think the majority of the people that I surround myself with are people who are activists and are advocates on so many levels. So I truly am humbled, actually, by the kind of energy that is coming forward from younger generations. And the relationship between activism and intergenerational practice is crucial. We really, really need to identify how we can go forward together in the sense that we can dismantle this hierarchy. We need to get rid of these types of authoritarian controls that exist in our society. And I truly believe that we need to open our ears and listen to younger generations, be surrounded by young people as cultures, traditional cultures have always done. There's never been this kind of separation of responsibility and civic society engagement in traditional societies. It's something that children grow up with. I certainly grew up with that, and I strongly practice that in my ongoing relationship to activism, the environment, and the accountability. Yes, that's there. We have to stop this overconsumption. And I think artists, cultural workers in general, have lived, the majority of us lived in a style, in a manner that is particularly rich and diverse in the way that we engage with our world.
Well, one question that I had for the three of you, obviously we don't have any children who represent a huge part of the generation of our planet today, and we don't have any elderly folks. And, when my grandfather was in his late 80s, he and his friends used to gather for what was called the 1,000-year banquet. So people who were 80, 90 years old, maybe about 12 or 13 of them would come together. And I love this idea of a 1,000-year-old banquet or a 10,000-year-old banquet. So we have so much information that we're flooded with today. What do you guys think of the role of wisdom? Radha, how about we start with you?
I think wisdom is incredibly important in our society, and there's so much of it that's carried by the elderly. I think it's a sadness that in the West we tend to live separated from our elderly parents and not together under one roof a lot of the time, because I think that the wisdom of the ages is very much imparted that way through physical proximity, through living together with our elders. We need wisdom now more than ever. We need to look to history to see the mistakes that we've already made, and so that we can learn, some of the ways that we maneuvered around the crises that we faced in the past, and carry that wisdom into the present.
And Jamili, what are your thoughts?
Well, there definitely is this relationship to seeking knowledge, and I think one of the Hadith had that is a saying, seek knowledge even unto China, was one of the sayings. So, I think it's an ongoing thing. We may not be able to seek it in China at this moment in time. I think we need to use our relationships, as Radha has referred to. That intergenerational elder context is one of enormous respect within Indigenous communities. And I think if we lean more in that direction, we will be in safer hands with the values that are shared within Indigenous communities, within the intergenerational context of those communities. And knowledge is obviously something that comes to us through trees and comes to us through various locations of nature. It's not just inside spaces of culture. So I think that is something that more and more of us are turning to, is this relationship that we have to the natural world.
And Chuck, how about you? In terms of a little lightning round, if you had a wish for the generation above you, what would it be? If you had a wish for the Generation Xers, something that they could change, what would you wish for?
Well, it's always tough to answer this one because it's hard to sort of generalize an entire generation and know what an entire generation is able to sort of contribute to a newer generation. But I will say I actually disagree with the conversation we just had on wisdom. I think it's really, really interesting to me because wisdom used to be something that we valued quite a bit as humanity, right? The young people learn from the elders and replicate. And then we've entered into a stage of our world where things change so rapidly that there are things that the new generation, what are they called? Gen Yers? Generation Z. So they think Generation Z, do and believe that, I'm like, oh, wow, I'm disconnected from that. And that's new knowledge sources that I'm learning from them. And then, sûr et certain, the pandemic generation is going to be bringing in new information and new knowledge. And so wisdom has often been used as a tool to sort of quiet the young. It's always been used as a tool to be like, listen to your elders. You don't have a say. Children are meant to be seen, not heard, right? That's been an ongoing thing. And so we see in the West especially, but we're seeing it in a lot of other cultures and a lot of other countries, as starting of division between generations, where people aren't living with their parents by choice. People aren't living with their grandparents by choice because there's this inability to explore oneself. There's this inability to try and find our place in today's society because we're busy having to listen to the wisdom of those previous generations. So I think my one wish for the older generations is maybe to be more willing, and I say this in a very general sense because everyone's different, but to be more willing to listen to the needs of the generation today and the generation tomorrow, sort of recognizing that the world we have today is not the world that they grew up in, and that a lot of the advice that they have for us might not be functional. And I know I'm ranting a little bit, but also sort of going on to intergenerational trauma, right? There's this really amazing quote I saw by a Bollywood actress. And she said something like so she quoted this on Twitter, and she basically said, her father asked her, why does everyone in your generation, so Generation Y and Generation Z, why does everyone in your generation go to therapy? Why is everyone in your generation depressed and needing all these, mental health resources? And she was like, because no one in your generation chose to do that. We need therapy because no one in your generation chose to have that therapy. And so we get passed on this intergenerational trauma that in a world that is completely different from the world that our parents grew up in. And we need to navigate it with the nuance and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, Radha, why don't you hop in? And because I can see you want to respond to that.
Well, I think, Chuck, that maybe, when I say wisdom, I mean something different than knowledge and different from culture and different from behavior, right? So just like, intelligence is different from those things too. So maybe we're a little bit limited by the words that we have to discuss this issue. I understand what you're saying, but I think that, yes, the world is changing very quickly, but there are certain things that are ever the same, right? Like caring and compassion, taking time. These simple things that, I know that these things can be confused by living with, let's say, a difficult parent, etc. But I think to be young, it's good to look forward, to understand the arc of your life. And that's something that you can gain by kind of, an intergenerational kind of living situation. I know that I'm not espousing this as the way forward necessarily, but I think that if I would, modify what I said earlier, I would say that I believe that wisdom is an essence of connected understanding that is gained by experience. And it's not indoctrination. It's not shoving your beliefs on somebody else. There's space in wisdom and kindness.
Very interesting. Jamili, I'm gonna, as the oldest person here today, and I think it's okay to say that because this is a generational panel, I'm wondering what your thoughts are on sort of, connecting those differences. I mean, for me, one thing that I found really incredible is there's just been this research done on building kindergartens inside of seniors' homes, and it brings so much joy to the little kids because they're so used to asking why, and a lot of the times, parents don't have the time to answer, but older people just love being able to sit down and listen to these young voices. And at the same time, it brings so much joy to the seniors to have these young little bodies playing all around them in their homes. What are your thoughts on sort of, this connection between youth and wisdom?
I certainly appreciate the variables that go on in people's lives and the relationships of passing down traditions and things like that can be harmful. But at the same time, I mean, I certainly, as a grandparent and someone who really cherishes the time with the younger children in our extended family, I definitely think that these kinds of moves are incredibly important and positive. And the more we can be outside and do that kind of thing together, the better. I mean, the general kind of relationship that we have as people as we age is definitely, I mean, there's a recognition that, yeah, you don't need as much. And so therefore, listening and giving and being quiet is certainly a big part of one's way of being present. So with Chuck, I'm 100% in agreement of that. Let's just listen more. And with Radha, I'm 100% in agreement with her. So I don't think I'm actually a very good, because I'm a negotiator. I grew up in a family of 11, so I was number 7. So I think I had this sort of desire to kind of see the point of views of those around me. And being number 7 meant that I looked after my younger sister. So actually when I left to do my work outside of my home, the one big thing I did know how to do was to look after a child. So I think that changes you when you are in the companionship of someone much younger than you. So I think that it's a mutually respectful engagement and relationship that we must honor and compassion. It's definitely an extremely significant word in our time.
Well, thank you so much, all three of you, for your wonderful insights today. And it's great to see all three of the generations working together and so collaborative in spirit. Up next, we have one more panel, and we're going to be looking at the future, how arts can light the way.
We have been asking you to consider giving donations throughout this evening so far. I do want to say that in these unprecedented times, we are absolutely humbled by your generosity this far. And I wanted to recognize the generosity of, first of all, our title sponsor, Steel Canada Resources Limited, and a number of other supporting sponsors. Just to let you know, we have raised over $124,000 right now. That is thanks to you, and that is in thanks to these supporting sponsors, Rashid Duka and Nuruddin Khwaja and family, Ray Gupta and Iqbal Moladina, Amir and Parveen Rupani, Arman and Munira Rupani, and Rahim and Rina Lalani. Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you very much to all of you who have been steadily contributing since the beginning of this show, beginning of this program. We definitely, we cannot express our enthusiasm for this and our appreciation. So thank you for that. Keep those donations coming in. At this point, I would like to welcome Ulrike Alhamis. How are you? Congratulations on the new post. You will be the new CEO of the museum. I wanted to ask you a couple of questions about the museum. Number one, something that not everybody knows about is the museum's educational mandate. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Absolutely, thank you, Ali. With its explicit emphasis on intercultural dialogue and pluralism, our mandate, which of course is a global mandate, makes us really unique as a museum. And we are uniquely empowered too through the opportunities we are given through our collections, our exhibitions, education programs, performing arts programs, and now through the crisis ever more powerfully, our virtual Museum Without Walls, which has been exposing us to hundreds of thousands of people all around the globe. And we have achieved so much already over the last 6 months with the work that we've been doing both in Toronto and online under the leadership, of course, of Henry King, our fantastic leader who has taken the museum to really unprecedented heights for a museum so young, only 6 years old. And he has left a monumental legacy which we are now dedicated to build on, and which also, of course, we will continue to draw inspiration from. Now, in this crisis, the mandate that we have, the educational mandate, gives us a unique opportunity to be of service and to meet the educational, intellectual, but also the emotional needs of our audiences. Here in Toronto, as a local arts and education hub, providing solace and inspiration and knowledge to our schools, our universities, and of course our communities as well. But even more so, our growing virtual museum, with which we can reach, as I said, hundreds and thousands of people all around the world, and particularly using our international partnerships and the unique networks that we can draw on in presenting inspirational and thought-provoking programming, and also, of course, again, in service through educational resources that we can make available to the world.
I know in this position of yours, you think a lot towards the future. In the very near future, there is a new exhibit that opens in November. I wanted you to talk a little bit about that, if you could, the new exhibition.
Sure. Our Remastered Exhibition. And the Remastered Exhibition is a unique example of how the COVID crisis is actually opening up new opportunities rather than just reminding us of all the challenges that we face in our daily lives. Through this crisis, many of us have turned to the arts, in the broadest sense of the word, to find solace, inspiration, and immerse in imaginary worlds that may reassure us that ultimately the human spirit will overcome any adversity through courage, through love, and through creativity. And in this climate, we too turned, as it were, to the arts by refocusing on some of our most outstanding masterpieces, paintings and works on paper, manuscripts, that contain so many of these imaginary worlds and stories that still over centuries tell us a lot about endurance and the human spirit in the face of adversity. And in order to draw out these stories and the beauty and lasting importance of the wisdoms that they convey, we are bringing out the stories through cutting-edge technology, and thereby really unlocking the potential of these historical artifacts for our contemporary lives, and really making the point that there's a lot to be found in the artifacts in our collection that is still relevant to our existence today and can help us overcome some of the challenges that we face through the arts.
Mm-hmm. And you face a few challenges yourself as you come in here, but it seems that you're definitely up to the task.
I'm very much looking forward to it, and as I said, before, it's really building on the foundations of Henry Kim's work, and also really working with the continuing support of our donors and our sponsors, whom I really would like to thank from the bottom of my heart. We couldn't really do it without you at all. And hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder, with your continuing enthusiasm for the museum, we will be able to grow our impact and contribute to making a positive difference to lives here in Toronto and across the world.
Thank you so much, Ulrike, and best of luck.
Thank you very much, Ali.
Ulrike Al-Khamis, as she said, your help is paramount in all of this. We ask you again to consider donating. You can do it using the QR code in the bottom of your screen. That is using the camera on your phone. You can press the donate button, click on the button. If you're watching online, you can see the ticker tape has been running out throughout. You can see friends and family who have been donating. Please consider matching their donations or giving a donation that you yourself are comfortable with. You can also follow us on social media, #Lapis2020. This event is called Lapis. I misread it when I first heard about it. I thought it said lapin, which is rabbits in French. And I thought we were raising money for rabbits. And although I'm sure they are in need of help somewhere, happy to hear that this isn't for the rabbits, this is for the museum and all the hard work that you just heard about that goes towards this museum. Lapis, by the way, is a metamorphic rock, a beautiful blue rock that is a symbolism of wisdom and truth. More appropriate than the carrot-eating rabbit. All right, let's move on. We have as I had mentioned earlier, we are now going to talk about how art influences the future. And I'm going to introduce you to Sashar Zarif. Sashar, I want to tell you a little something about him before I introduce him. He came to the Aga Khan Museum and he saw the exhibit here. It is called Sanctuary, and Sanctuary is woven carpets from artists all around the world. They sent their images to Lahore, Pakistan, where carpet weavers wove these carpets. These carpets convey a message of hope for a sanctuary or some kind of a refuge. And when Sashar came to the museum, he looked at these carpets and his words were, this is my life. Please turn your attention to Sashar Zarif.
Born into an immigrant family where my grandmother carried her stories of displacement with her on a carpet that she brought with her from her father's home, small carpet, and accompanied by her singing, dancing, and storytelling, introduced me to the world of nomadicness. Carpet for me has a different significance. I feel that carpet can transform me because when I was a child sitting with my grandmother on that carpet, she managed to transform that little carpet in Tehran, father's mansion in Baku, Soviet Azerbaijan, with the power of singing and dancing and stories that she told me. So my inspiration for this piece is my life. Carpet is, for me, about the colors, the nature in it. Carpet is about all the people who wove it, all people who have sat on it. Where I come from, carpet holds a very special place. It's the first item in a dowry. When you buy dowry for your child for a new home, carpet is the first item. Carpet introduce the idea of nomadic life. And I think as human, we need to embrace the nomadicness of time and space in order to be a healthy part of the universe.
Hasretimin hasılın erbab yer. Parmaklarım kan töküler, kan benim. Tapılmayıp derdime derman benim. İlme salan bağrımlar kan benim. Tapılmayıp derdime derman benim. Hasretimin hasılın erbab yer. Parmaklarım kan töküler kan benim. Hasretimin hasılın erbab yer. Parmaklarım kan töküler kan benim. İlme salan bağrımlar kan benim. Tapılmayıp derdime derman benim. Hasretimin.
In every stretching tar, between every food, lies a lonely ah. For every reaching and every pull beats an aching heart. In every collab and every ilme and every hook lies an unsatisfied me. And for every knot and every cut stands an open wound. In every rush and every brush, every cut and every comb, there is a story. Carpet is not just about its colors. not just about its shapes. It's not just about its beauty, not just about its worth. It's about every suffering soul and every worn out body, every calloused finger, every folded knee, sitting at the loom, weaving the history of a lost dream. And yes, this carpet is my sanctuary. And this one. And this one.
Köyüme güneş yünüm yener yanar her Sen yanım hay Bir yol sevilmez salandan ağlar yanım eyleyim. Yenme yalan Yusuf'um yanıma yasip. Tanım onun doğru yeniyorlar derdi dermanıdır yanı tanımasın tanı dermanıdır nereye yanılmasın yar dermanıdım Lüdür münasım yar dermanımın yanılmasın yar dermanımın yananasın yar dermanımın seni dermez yar dermanımın yara dağınasın yar dermanımın yanar dağına sen yar dermanımın Gelir yanıma sen yar dermanımın Yanağa dolasın yar dermanımın Gülün yağdına sen yar dermanımın Güler yanıma sen yar der yar dermanımın
Such a powerful performance. Now, if artists have one thing in common, it's that they certainly don't think or act within limited boundaries. It's with their wild imaginations let loose that they're able to see new visions of the world, and we are able to see through their eyes. And today we have three exceptional artists who are here to share their ideas and thoughts on how artists can light the way and how we can all begin to see, hopefully, a better future. With us, we have Ekko Nimaco. He is a Ghanaian Canadian who is internationally known for his Lego art, combining a multidisciplinary and formal arts program. Ekko explores Afrofuturism and Black narratives through an unmistakable aesthetic. Ekko has exhibited in Canada, Germany, Korea, and the United Kingdom. Sundus Abdulhadi is a globally acclaimed artist who has published a book for children titled Shams, and it's about trauma, transformation, and healing. Her upcoming book is called Take Care of Yourself, The Art and Cultures of Care and Liberation, and it explores care, curation, and community. And Yassine Narsi Al-Saman is a multimedia artist who is recognized as a pioneer of the Arab hip-hop movement. He teaches music at Concordia University and is releasing his very first book, Text Messages, or How I Found Myself Time Traveling. Welcome, everybody, to the panel today. Now, what I love about art is that it really opens our ideas to new perspectives, whether it's San Mandelas that aren't meant to last, you know, like, or Andy Goldsworthy's art that actually dissolves back into nature. I'm wondering, Sundus, starting off with you, you've talked about art as a nonverbal language. What can art teach us that actually helps to transcend cultural boundaries?
Wow, that's a pretty loaded question. It is absolutely a visual language that is nonverbal, and it can be universal. But its symbolism is something that also, it can connect us to our roots, it connects us to our ancestry and our specific cultures that we come from. So there are both sides to that, in the sense that the symbolism has to be something that is unique to who we are, and also communicating a message that can truly be transcendent and transformative. And I really see the potential in art making to that degree. And it's always been something that's inspired me and has pushed me to challenge myself as a storyteller and also as a visual maker.
Ekko, how about you? What is your perspective on how art can shape our perspectives and our minds, particularly with respect to the imagination and the future? Because your work is so incredibly futuristic looking.
Well, I feel like artists often, in arts in general, whether it be visual art or even or music, performative arts, they dictate culture in so many ways. So many people look to art to find inspiration and to really transcend. And with my work in particular, I'm very interested in creating new landscapes and new narratives. For example, using something I call speculative reclamation, where we take an idea that has existed historically, or a narrative that has existed historically, something like Robin Hood, let's say, of English medieval lore. And I created a sculpture called the Bandit Queen of Olata that the sculpture itself tells a story of a desert queen in the Sahara that escaped enslavement and went on to liberate enslaved peoples and essentially rob from the rich and give to the poor. And the speculative aspect comes in where it's not painted in the way that this person existed in history, but let's say, for example, that someone from England was there in that time and heard of this person and then created the story of Robin Hood based off of an actual African character. And so much of our histories have been taken and through colonialism and the slave trade and erased. So it's important to do things like this to really kind of give scope for the future. So yeah, I think it's fundamental for artists to keep thinking and imagining new landscapes and creating new histories.
Yassine, I wanted to ask you, I've seen you perform, I've seen you bring the house down, you have so many different abilities, from actor to author now and also rapper. And a lot of your work has been quite political. So I kind of wanted to get a sense from you about what you think the possibilities are for art to change the world.
I'm first and foremost, I don't think my art is political. I think we are a politicized people, whether you're talking about Muslims or Arabs or black people in society or other people. We're politicized by the narrative that exists outside of us. So in order for us to change our immediate environment, we almost have to address it through our work. It's a subconscious thing or a conscious thing, right? So I also don't believe, to answer the second part of your question, I don't necessarily believe that we can change the world with art. I do believe that art has the ability to amass attention better than any other social experiment, such as politics or any form of divisive gathering. So I think art can start the conversation or galvanize a people in a group together to start talking with each other. And I think that's the most beautiful part. It's not really the show that you're watching, it's more the audience being around each other and interacting each other that is the magic of the show. So I dabble in multimedia because I feel like I'm able to target different audiences in different ways, whether it be on an individual level or in a group, so.
Ekko, so I want to throw that question back to you. What's your perspective? Do you think that art can change the world politically, or do you agree with Yassine?
I don't think it's necessarily an either-or situation. I think that art has exhibited its potential and its ability to affect change. But at the same time, I completely agree with the fact that work is innately, especially work produced by those groups that are marginalized or experience otherness, their work by nature is politicized because by their very existence in the world, there's like a political nature to our existence. So I think it's a matter of both. I think that we've seen art movements affect so many people and change perspectives, and at the same time, it's not necessarily like the immediate or fundamental role to do that thing, to change and make those changes. I think it's just by the nature of artists alone and creating work that is in many ways a reflection of the world or a commentary on the world. Somehow there's like a trickle effect, and it often does lead to change.
Interesting perspectives. So, yeah, of course, feel free.
I think also the great thing about being an artist is it's a direct reflection of somebody claiming their own agency, and that act in itself is an inspiration for the people that might be consuming or watching the art. I think that act is almost as powerful as the physical piece of art that's left over afterwards. So that is a political act in itself, definitely.
Very true. Sundus, I wanted to get your perspective, and I wanted to hear a little bit about the children's book you wrote, why you wrote it, and sort of the impact that you believe art has on, young imaginations and young minds.
It's not the role of the artist is also linked to the role of the intellectual or the critical thinker. And the critical thinker, when independent of the state and government and all of these systems and the systems that maintain the way that our world has been dysfunctioning so far, has this unique position where they can actually imagine a different way of being. And artists, at least for me, speaking for myself, I've always been really inspired by these critical thinkers, and that have only really, been around for within the past century. I mean, Malcolm X would have still been alive now if he wasn't assassinated. And a lot of these really interesting people who have come and tried to break down these systemic, break down the nature of systemic injustice, it hasn't been that long. So we're still living in the same era. So for us as artists to take from these really interesting strands of thought and run with them, and it enables first a visual communication of that thought, and also it enables this transformative ability for communication and new narratives, as Ekko was saying as well, the creation of a new narrative. So imagination plays a huge role in that, in my opinion. And with my personal art practice, I've always been interested in the idea of subverting existing, the idea of subversion and the creation of new narratives through storytelling. So what I try to do is always bring it back to connect to self and community, and also the world at large. With Shams, the illustrated children's book that you mentioned, which is right there, I took a really personal story, which is also, in fact, quite universal. It's a story of trauma. And trauma is something that is so common, and so many people have gone through traumatic events in their life. Yet the systems that we live in don't really allow space for that kind of conversation on not just trauma, but on healing and on healing trauma. And trauma isn't only personal to what we've been through in our own life. Trauma is also intergenerational and passed down through generations. And we're talking here, generations upon generations who have endured different kinds of traumas, like colonialism is a trauma, different kinds of systemic racism and injustice is trauma. So with the story of Shams, what I did is I tried to use the symbol of a little girl made of glass. And she represents that kind of fragility that we all kind of hold. And one day she breaks into a million pieces, and she has to put herself back together again. So the story basically speaks about this point of transformation and the idea of healing after experiencing something that is so kind of earth-shattering, and the story, the arc, is meant to be really empowering for people who have experienced trauma, but also serves to bring a little bit of empathy to people who really haven't, experienced the kind of hardships that a lot of people of, diverse communities have around the world. So myself, as an Iraqi artist, it was really important for me to create a story that I could also have translated into Arabic and spread that kind of same message of empowerment and healing to the youth of the Middle East and the Arab world who have experienced and endured so much trauma, and too much for them to even start to articulate.
In this very short period of time, a short panel, we've managed to discuss healing, imagination, and politics. I just want to give you guys a couple moments just to, leave us with a few final thoughts on how you think, each of you, starting with you, Yassine, on how you think arts can light the way. It's the power 30-second round.
So I would say, as a professor, one of the tenets that I use in my class is to have the youth learn how to be self-aware and be aware of their environment and be critical of themselves in dissecting their environment. And I think if we teach that to kids to be media literate, but also to be creative in their approach to everyday thinking, then that's the first step to changing the environment around us, is really to influence the youth, because we're already deep into our life. So to just change the paradigm around how we accept things in society is the first step towards change, in my opinion. And I learned that through hip hop music, through being self-aware and being a guest in the home of hip hop, and learning other people's histories and developing empathy around them. It taught me how to appreciate changing the world day by day.
And Ekko, you get the last word tonight. So what about you? How do you think the arts can light the way?
I think critical thought, now that it's been brought up, is actually really important. Teaching young people how to think critically about the world around them is super, super important. I think that was what was missing for myself and for a lot of my friends growing up when I was really young. So I think that, and finding ways to broaden imagination and encouraging like artistic play, because that is fundamental. I know it has been for me, the notion of like artistic play, because as we get older, it seems that the notion of playing becomes something that is left like a juvenile thing or something for children. But I think that's a great way also to bridge the gap between generations, is to encourage and foster artistic play.
So true. Well, thank all of you so much, Sundus, Yassine, Ekko, for being so truly illuminating on tonight's panel.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zaya, and a huge thanks to all the wonderful panelists that you heard from this evening. It is almost time for our final performer of the evening, but first I want to remind you of two things. Number one, a gentle reminder to, again, please donate. We've made it as easy as we possibly can. There is a QR code at the bottom of your screen right there. You hold your camera phone above it. It will take you to a link where you can donate, or you just click on the donate button on your screen right now. And we thank you so much for that. The other thing I want to tell you about is a very exciting new podcast that is coming out in a month's time. The Aga Khan Museum will be putting on this podcast series. It is hosted by award-winning journalist Abdul Rahman Malik. He will be interviewing athletes, thought leaders, artists, and really reshaping the idea of what it means to be a Muslim in today's age. Please keep an eye out for that. We are at our final performer. I want to introduce you to Maneli Jamal. Maneli uses very unique sounds to create very interesting, beautiful music. I'm going to let him tell you about it now.
This song that I'm going to play for you here is a special song for me. It was written in memory of my childhood in Germany. And growing up in the Western world my whole life, I know how important it is to have your cultural background there as well, musically speaking, of course. And when I was a little boy, I remember my dad was in the room to the right of me, and my mom was in the room to the left of me. And my punishment growing up was always to draw and to paint, because both of my parents are musicians and artists. As I was there, forced to paint and draw as my punishment, my dad was playing Persian violin. Really nostalgic, really sort of haunting Persian melodies that stuck with me ever since. And to the room to the left of me was my mom listening to Western classical music like Tchaikovsky, Bach, Beethoven, all the greats. So in my left ear, there was this Western influence, and in my right ear was this Middle Eastern influence. And I think later on in my life, when I eventually moved to Canada, I realized how important these cultural differences were. I try to cultivate that with this piece here called Zaire.
Friends, that brings us to the end of our performances for this evening. We could not be together physically, but we were together via this event. Intellectually, we were together creatively and artistically, and tonight was the way that the Aga Khan Museum could light the way for all of us to spend an evening together. Before we go, I would like to reintroduce to you Ulrike Al-Khamis, and also introduce to you Nasir Nur Muhammad, who is the committee chair for the Lapis benefit this evening.
Thank you.
Nasir, let me ask you, I mean, it has been a benefit. We have made many calls on people to consider donating. How did that go this evening?
It's been phenomenal. I couldn't be happier. From a few moments ago, from 45 countries around the world, we have raised over $823,000. Wow. It just tells you how important the work of the museum is and how much support we have and understanding of what we need to do to light the way forward. So, wonderful.
That's phenomenal news. When I'm standing here, I feel like I'm just speaking into an abyss sometimes, and you're hoping on the other end good things are happening. But I've watched the ticker tape all evening go back and forth with people's names, and that is really, really wonderful news. I wanted to get your final thoughts on what you thought of the evening and the talent that you saw among panelists and performers and thought leaders.
The panels and the performance were spectacular. The breadth of the abilities, the range was phenomenal. I mean, we're just so lucky to live in a country where such talent can be found in one place, and for a place like the Aga Khan Museum to be able to bring it together for one night under one roof is amazing. So I think it's great, and I'm hoping that we will be able to do more and more of this. No pressure, Ulrike, but we'd like to do this again.
With pleasure, Nasir.
So I just have a couple of final words, if I may. First and foremost, to Prince Amin and to the Board of Governors, thank you for your support and encouragement. Ali, thank you for guiding the evening with such humor and for encouraging everyone to keep giving to the museum. To all the performers, you've brought such beauty into our lives. Thank you. To Zaya Tong and the panelists, you have broadened our perspectives, so for that we thank you. To the Gala Committee, Wanda Ho, Naushad Jina, Zara Karimi Jan Mohammed, Rumi Kashavji, and Tess McLean, thank you for your passion, for your commitment, and for your attention to detail. To the staff of the museum, thank you for helping to make tonight a reality. You guys have been a delight to work with. To the sponsors, thank you for your generosity, for believing in the museum, and for recognizing how important the work of the museum is, especially in today's time. And to everyone who has been watching and donating, thank you for opening your hearts and purses. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. The donation portal is open. These numbers were from a little while ago. Thank you, and we hope you will push us up to the next level and the next level. So I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you, and until next time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. On behalf of Nasir and Ulrike and the Aga Khan Museum and all the staff working here, and the camera crew and everybody who's been in the background safely, they've done a wonderful job here, and it's been a wonderful night. My name is Ali Hassan. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, we have a question for Ulrike before we go. It just flew in my ear. How can people participate at home? How can people at home participate?
In donating or in the activities of our museum? In many different ways, because of course our virtual museum is available through our social media, but also of course please do visit our website. There are many resources available there, virtual tours through the museum, virtual tours through our temporary exhibitions, and of course our videos are also available on YouTube, including the recording of this evening tonight. So please encourage your family, your friends to enjoy this program of tonight, and perhaps I can just take the opportunity also to thank all of you from the bottom of all our hearts again for being with us tonight and for making it such a special night. And of course, thank you, Nasir. Thank you, the Gala Committee. Thank you, Amir Alibai, who is the artistic director of this evening's program. And thank you to the entire Aga Khan Museum team for making this such a special night for all of us. And also, just as we close, don't forget that we have a special treat for you in our museum shop, in our e-shop, where we are offering you 20% off for a limited period of time on our wonderful products. And beyond that, I really hope that we will soon be able to welcome you to the museum. Don't forget the opening of the Remastered Exhibition on November 7th and to our virtual museum. Please follow us, spread the word, and looking forward to imagining a new future with all of you. Good night and thank you.
Good night.